Well, how about a quick status update? One, mounted the throttle. We replaced the that rigid piece of all thread that was connected to the throttle pedal. We instead ordered a stock throttle cable, and we've still got to clean up all this stuff in here. There's stuff that runs through the doors and everything else here. But anyway, stock setup, which is a cable and a sleeve. And so that's exactly what we have going on here. We need to connect our secondary spring. Here's, wires for the chassis and stuff. We'll take care of that stuff also. Here's a bunch of wires that from the controller harness that were cut and taped up. Unwrap the tape, and just at a glance you see that the throttle power, it's a 5-volt throttle, it's not connected, and yet there's stuff connected to the throttle not correctly, so we're going to have to rectify that. Here's the 12-volt control, which is used for your menu switch, your economy mode, your just a lot of different things. I said reverse, economy mode, menu switch, and that type of thing. So that's not connected to anything, so that's got to be taken care of. So anyway, got to go through that and see what's going on there. Connecting up a lot of the wiring here. So the heater contactor is wired. I still have to take care of the ground, but I'm waiting. I might have some other grounds I'll just attach here. Got our pre-charge relay and resistor. All that's wired up. So, making a little progress there, and I had done, the wiring for the KSI input, the KSI circuit that in this setup it's going from our fuse block, so when the ignition is turned on, we're getting power that's going up here to this safety interlock relay, which is controlled by the AVC2. So if you're not plugged in, that means this relay is not energized, which means the power would go directly through. And it does. And then from there it goes to the inertia switch, and then back to the JLD 404 for your low voltage cutout, and then comes out and goes to our KSI input to the controller. But we weren't getting any output, so in tracing it, I got to this point right here. There's a connector right here that's coming from the inertia switch, and there's no power there. We have power going into the inertia switch, none coming out. Press the reset, no change. So I'm going to pull the inertia switch off and see what's the matter. But it's obviously the issue. Our current path is not going through the inertia switch. So just for quick little tests like that, just using a little test light. And so let me take that off and see what's the matter. Well, I know my videos aren't the most entertaining. I'm not good looking. I'm not articulate. I'm not witty. And we don't have any fancy graphics, nice lighting, nice audio, any of that stuff. But I throw in some stuff once in a while that I hope has some value to you, and that makes it worth watching. And right now what we're getting ready to do is hook up the charger. I'm bleeding, so I had to go grab it. You get old, you cut yourself easy. Anyway, getting ready to hook up the charger. So these are two of the lines, and we've got the ground down there, that are coming from the charge port. And what we need to know is which one is line 1 and which is line 2. So we can hook up the corresponding connections to the lines coming from our charger here. So back at the charge port, what I'm going to do, and because everything's covered with tape and everything, there's not an easy way to know what is what. So I'm going to take a clip and I'm going to clip to one of the posts here. So we've got, a line, the two lines in the ground, and a proximity and pilot. So I'm simply going to connect my jumper to one of those, and then I'm going to go to ground, and if I can find a good ground here. All right, here we go. The other side of the bolt. So connect my jumper there. So I've got, the right one. If this is the top, I've got the right one. The pin on the right is the one that I'm connected to. So now at the other end, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my volt ohm meter. So that pin I hooked onto in the rear on the charge port, which would be the right side if that were rotated 90 degrees and showed you where top was. Anyway, that's line 1, okay? And so line 1 we know is the brown wire here. If I remember correctly, I'll double check. So I'm going to find out which one of these coming from the rear, this red or black, is line 1. So I'm going to go to the ohm scale and connect one probe to ground. And guess what? First shot. So no continuity on the black, but on the red wire, 0 resistance. So red is line 1. But anytime you're tracing a wire, as long as you can have both ends that don't have any outside interference, you can use this method. So if you just have an end of a wire and it's not connected to anything that will give you a false reading, then you can easily trace it. Well, this is the current status. We've got all of the 12 volt and control wiring connected. We've got the throttle installed and connected up here in the corner. Here's the throttle cable, coolant reservoir. Coolant system has been connected, plumbed, filled, tested. All is good. Like I said, we've tested the things that we can test. We can't test any of the high voltage stuff until, we have the cells in place and wired up. But we did test things like our key switch relay, which is going to turn on the DC-DC converter. That's working. The heater relay's working. Our power steering pump's working. Like I said, the cooling system's working. The vacuum pump for the power brakes is working. We get our KSI signal. That's working. So everything is that we can at this point is tested and working. But as you can see, there's still a mess. Lots of wires just running. Looks like running amok. Not very tidy. Not recommended. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go through and with wire ties and split loom clean things up. Maybe in some cases we may disconnect something and reroute it a little differently just to make things cleaner and a little simpler. But mostly at this point it's just a matter of wire ties and some split loom just to clean things up and protect the wires and make it look a little bit better. But let's go back and refer to our to-do lists real quick. Well, you can see that we had the original list, the rear cell containment, and the status of that is that we're still waiting on the battery box from the fabrication shop. Front cell hold down. Well, we've shown that to you. We'll be looking at it again once we're installing the cells and so forth. You'll see how all that works. Change the most positive location. Well, that's one of the things that we're going to do next. Once we clean up the control wiring and the 12-volt wiring, once that's all organized, then we're going to run the traction pack wiring, and that will be at the point where we decide where we're going to put our most positive cell and how that's all going to be run, interconnected, and so where those locations will be. New low mounting location for the vacuum pump. Well, we did that. You saw how that is now mounted, and it's not mounted to that component board so that we can raise the component board for installation, inspection, cleaning of the front battery pack. Let's see, change component board mounting, we did that. Coolant leak, of course, we removed the chill plate from the controller and cleaned it, resealed it, installed everything in place, and of course that's all working as it should now. Clean up the transmission fluid. That'll probably be one of the last things I do. That's going to be a dirty, nasty job. Got to clean up that cross member and all the fluid that's sitting up there and clean the shop floor. Protect cables. Well, that's going to be part of what we're doing, and the double aught cables will be protected when we run those also. So that's coming up. We tested all the 12-volt circuits, clean up the wiring. That's next up. Test all systems. Well, we've tested what we can so far, but we haven't tested all systems yet. Program the JLD 404 and controller. We'll do the JLD 404 fairly soon. Controller we can't do until we have our battery pack wired up. Some other things that I had listed that weren't a part of that original list. Fix the throttle. The throttle again was, I didn't like the location. I definitely didn't like the way that it was connected, the rigid connection. It just wasn't going to stand the test of time, that's for sure. So we relocated the throttle. We went with an original Jeep throttle cable, so that's all taken care of. The menu switch was not wired correctly, so we took care of that. We, like I said, fixed the leak on the controller cooling system, and we added some length to a couple of the hoses to allow for the fact that our component board now tilts up. The cooling system wasn't wired originally, so we did that. We're still waiting to do, wire the traction pack. Of course, got to have containment first. Wire the charger, we just did that. And bottom balance cells, that is ongoing. So that's the current status. I'll be back to give you a shot of what the 12 volt control wiring looks like once it's cleaned up. Well, here's the shot after we kind of clean things up a little bit. I just wire tied to secure things, clean it up a little bit. Only spot of split loom was right here, just because we relieved this edge so it's not sharp anymore, but still, that was the only spot that I didn't want there to be a problem with the wires. We're gonna tape this part up, but after we make sure everything's running as it should. The thing is, buttoning things up too much just seems like it always sets yourself up for a problem later on. So I like to, do so much and then save the last little bit when I know everything is ready to roll and I'm not gonna have to tear it apart again. I don't like doing things twice. So now we're ready to start running the high voltage connections, and first ones I'm going to do, because they've already been run, is the one coming from the fuse. That's coming from the rear pack to the fuse, and the fuse to the front pack. We already have that cable, so I want to see where that reaches, and we'll do that first. Then we have the one that was originally coming, was the most positive, and came up to the switch. I haven't looked to see where he has that run yet, but hopefully that's still going to work. And then we just have, there originally was a short one that went from the cell right underneath here, and it came up, remember it was chafing against the sheet metal here and came to here. And so that one will no longer be, and because this tilts up from the front here, so we'll have to redo that one. I'm not sure how I'm going to do all of that just yet. So that's what I'm going to be working on next, is I'll place some cells in for placeholders, see where things will be and what kind of reach I need, and to see if we can get that done. And I'll show you that once I have it up and I'm doing that. But first, let's take a look inside the vehicle. So we cleaned up the wiring on the outside. We still have wiring to clean up on the inside. And this isn't our doing. This was already like this. So, but it can't be left this way. So we've got stuff coming from the doors, and I imagine that's the windows. And so it's got power windows that have been added. And I haven't checked to see if they work. But that's not what we're here to do. So, but anyway, need to secure these. See, they're right behind the clutch, and I mean it's going to be in the way of the parking brake there. And then there's just so much hanging down. Just, and then the one going to the other door. it's just, if you climb in, you're gonna snag yourself on these wires, and something's gonna get damaged. So we're just gonna secure things up out of the way, and somebody else who's gonna work on the Jeep itself can take care of that. Our objective is to inspect, repair, and complete this conversion and finish. So hopefully once we get the cells in and connect all that she spends the life. When I was down underneath doing some wire management underneath the vehicle, I checked to see if I could spin the motor. It spins, but it feels like it has a lot more resistance than it should. But you know, this might be a new transmission and everything, and it just you know, might not want to rotate quite so easy. I mean, it didn't feel any restriction. It just didn't spin as easy as usual. And usually we're dealing with, you know, old vehicles, and the transmission's typically fairly worn or broken in at least. So that's where we are, and so I'll get to this at some point. It's not a high priority at this moment, but just wanted to show you what we're up against here. No big deal. We'll take care of it. Well, here's the component board. A little more accomplished on it. I've got this isn't secured yet, but we've got the negative most line coming in from our back battery pack up to our shunt. This is from our most positive point in our traction pack, which is in the front portion up here, and it's just going to be secured along here. But I wanted to show you opening up the front battery box here and show you what we've done inside. So it just hinges up, and because you're working around batteries, you'd want to use something non-conductive to prop it up with. I'm just using something that's handy, a 2x4 that we have laying around in the shop here. So I've got 6 cells installed. I got 3 in the front here and 3 across the back wall. And I had to come up with, it's always more of a challenge when you have odd numbers. So this is 27 cell pack. So I got 3 rows of 9. So it just, it didn't come out the way that I wanted it to. And you know, I worked it all different ways to see how I could get it to come out. You're just not going to get it to come out the way that I wanted it to come out. So this is the most positive point in our battery pack right there. And then this is the most negative in the front pack, which is going from here through the fuse and to the rear pack. The other side of the rear pack is the most negative and goes up to the shunt that I showed you a moment ago. So as it turns out, I had to, because I wanted these cables to be in these locations. And so what I had to do was come up with a jumper. And see if I can get this to show up. So here's the layout. And so in the front here I have a jumper. And so just couldn't get, you know, things to fall the way I wanted to. Like I said, it's what happens when you're working with odd configuration like this. It's not going to come out where I wanted it, at least. So anyway, so there's a jumper across the front, and let me show you that. It's going to have a piece of black go over it. It's a black line now, but I'm going to put a piece of black over it to protect it. So with the, you know, the hood up and the battery box lid up, you can see that's light on it. But this is the jumper, and it's going from this outside cell to the other outside cell in the front. Hopefully, just like my diagram. So as I finish bottom balancing, we'll be installing the rest of the cells up here. And once they're all installed, then I'll, of course, wire the interconnects. So that's how it's coming. Everything works fine with our hinge, and so real happy with the way that this came out. It works easily, works well, and so we're getting close. Battery box gets here, away we go. You know, I might turn this around. That's originally the way I had it, going out the back, but I you know, I don't know. I might do that just to get it to lay over here better. I don't know. I just put it out here to see how I liked it. I'm not sure I do. But you know what? That's the beauty when you do your own. You know, when you convert a vehicle yourself, you get to choose how you do things. So anyway, I think I'm going to pivot that 90 degrees and have it come out the back. And like I said, anytime there's something that's going to rub, we'll put a piece here that will protect that from being any chafing or anything like that. Same as we're going to do in the front, just so this it's barely touching, but like I said, we'll sleeve it so that it's, and I'll sleeve it in black, but when the hood's down and everything, you won't see that. So that was the idea, is we don't want it to be seen. So continuing on, just fine-tuning the bottom balancing is what I'll be doing until we get that rear battery box. So that's not the most exciting part of a conversion, but it does make a difference. One and done. Never touch them again. Well, I did. I changed that cable around. I didn't like the way that it was sticking out the side like that. And like I said, this was originally the way I had measured it and cut it, and everything was for this way. I thought, just try on the other way. You can see it clears, doesn't touch our board at all. Real nice fit, and will hinge and clear nicely. So that part's done. Well, unfortunately, it looks like we're going to have to make new cables that run between the motor and the controller. That's stretched tight right there, and we don't want it stretched that tight. But even if it was, the lugs are the incorrect size for the stud or the bolt. Hopefully that's showing up. So we don't want to use the incorrect size. So to cut the lug off, that's going to shorten it that much on each end. We don't have that much to spare. So, yeah, not what I wanted to have to do. So, yeah. Anyway, just for reference, when you're doing your own build, use the correct size lug for the terminal. And all three of these are that way on both ends. So anyway, that's quite a bit of cable that we're going to have to use, and lugs and heat shrink, and so that adds to the cost. I was hoping to be able to reuse that. Well, I was able to use one of the existing cables, and because I found one of them to have the correct size lug and terminal hole on the lug, so I only had to replace one lug end, and was able to make that work. So I only had to replace two of the cables, and so it's pretty much done as far as we are going to go right now. We're waiting on the rear battery box, as I mentioned before, and we're finishing up bottom balancing. So we'll finish installing the cells on the front pack, but we still have to wait on that rear pack to be installed. But the wiring's there. We're going to have to change the lugs, but other than that, yeah, it's ready to install the rear battery box, the cells, wire up the interconnects, and then we can start checking the systems, the DC to DC converter, and see if this thing will move under its own power. So I think they started this project back in 2018, but I'm not positive. So it's been a while in the makings, and so I'm sure they'll be excited to see this thing roll. It's a really nice little Jeep. It's fully restored, fresh paint. It was a chassis off restoration, so it's I'm sure they're going to be excited to have it back on the road. So I'll let you see more when we get to that point with the rear box and so forth.